Okay. Let me just repeat this. If you're interested in doing this as a project for your the class, look at the YouTube videos done by Dr. Lustig. He's from San Francisco, University of California Med School. He's done some very, very popular. It's been a talk show guest numerous times. It's really, really interesting. Okay, so carbohydrates. Basically, carbs are a combination of alcohol and aldehydes and ketones. Now, so carbohydrates then have a lot of the same reactions as alcohols and a lot of the same reactions as aldehydes and ketones. And there's a new reaction that we haven't talked about at all is when you combine an aldehyde and an alcohol or a ketone and an alcohol. And that is the essence of chemistry of carbohydrates, is that combined reaction of aldehydes, ketones with alcohols. There are 4 classes of carbs: monosaccharides, disaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. These are not talked about very much, unfortunately, but they're extremely important. They come into play as a prebiotic. You know, a lot of people talk about probiotics for the microbiome in your gut. The food for the bacteria in your gut is called a prebiotic. And oligosaccharides fall into that class. So, for example, there's an oligosaccharide called raffinose that's in breast milk, human breast milk. And that is non-digestible by the infant, but it's used in the infant's gut as a prebiotic to make sure that that child's microbiome is healthy. So oligosaccharides are a very important class of carbohydrates. We're going to talk about raffinose for one and a couple others as well in this class. Okay, monosaccharides, mono, as you know, meaning one. So that's 1 unit. Example, that would be glucose. Disaccharide, 2 units. An example, that would be sucrose or mannose. Polysaccharide, starch. Amylpectin. Cellulose. You'll be noting the structures of those as well. So those are some examples of the 4 units of that make up carbohydrates. Now, we're going to run into this concept of an enantiomer when we talk about amino acids. So carbohydrates and amino acids exist as enantiomers. So we can think of an enantiomer as a mirror image. If we look at our left and right hand, for example, each hand has 4 fingers and a thumb. Each hand has a palm, and the 4 fingers are attached to the palm. The thumb is attached to the palm. So these kind of have the same formula, but they're not the same. They're not the same combination. So these would be an enantiomer of one another, a mirror image of one another. They perform very similar functions, but not exactly the same. Certain things you can do left-handed more easily than you can do right-handed, and vice versa. Okay. The same thing happens with molecules. Yeah. We can have a mirror image. You can have a mirror image of one molecule with the other. Okay, and those are called enantiomers. There are a lot of drugs out there that are enantiomers of one another. A very, very famous case of a good and a bad molecule and the relationship between the two of them, there are enantiomers of one another. It's called a thalidomide disaster that happened back in the 60s. Has anyone heard of that? Thalidomide was given to pregnant women in their first trimester for nausea. And the problem is thalidomide existed as both a D and an L enantiomer. One of them reduced nausea. The other one caused horrendous birth defects. And they didn't understand why these birth defects was happening until they narrowed it down to thalidomide. Another common example of an enantiomer is MSG. Glutamic acid is an amino acid, and amino acids exist as both D and L forms or enantiomers. And when you, our body makes the L form of glutamic acid. When you buy MSG at the store, you're getting both the D and the L form. And many people are allergic to the D form of glutamic acid. And that's when it gets all of its hype from. Most people don't have any effect at all, but some people are very sensitive to it. So enantiomers exist in nature quite a bit. And for that to happen, you've got to have a carbon that has 4 unique groups attached to it. When that happens, you have a chiral carbon. I'm going to give you a lot of examples here in a minute. Chiral carbons produce D, you know, enantiomers. So let's look at this carbon here. We have 4 groups. Doesn't matter how long the group is. This could be a C7. It doesn't matter how long it is. And it's got to be 4. Can't be 3 or 5. It's got to be 4. 4 totally independent, unique groups attached to a carbon. That becomes a chiral carbon. Now, this, I was helping a student with this MCAT preparation. This was a question on that, how to identify a chiral carbon. So it's thrown around a lot. If we look at this, happens to be a 6-carbon sugar. And let's go down and look at each of the 6 carbons. Okay, if we look at the first one up here, we have 1, 2, 3 groups. So that first carbon is definitely not a chiral carbon. If we look at the second group, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 that are unique. So the second carbon is a chiral carbon. Does everyone see that?
Yeah.
Look at the third carbon. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's also a chiral carbon. The fourth carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4. Chiral carbon. Carbon number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Carbon number 6, however, is not a chiral carbon. Let me draw it bigger. It's 4, but it's not unique. It's got the H is duplicated. So carbon 6 is not chiral. Carbon 1 is not chiral because it only has 3 groups. Carbon number 6 has 4 groups, but they're not unique. Okay, so we have carbons 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's 4 chiral carbons.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by unique? Like how like can you point out unique versus not unique?
Different.
Okay.
H, they're the same, right? Not
Yeah.
unique.
Okay, so if it was like H and OH right there, it'd be unique.
Yeah, so if we, for example, made this guy over here, okay, now everything's unique. So now it's chiral.
Okay. So if it was like on top and bottom H and H, that would be not unique because there's at least 2 of the same thing.
If the H's were, let's go back to that. Let's see. Instead of having it like this, you're saying that the H was on top?
Yeah, like could it go either way?
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still, the H's are identical, so that wouldn't count here.
Okay, so if there's like 2 of the same whatever, it's not unique.
Correct.
Okay.
It's got to be totally unique.
Okay.
All 4 of them.
Perfect.
Better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So as you saw up here, we have what? 4 chiral carbons. You can have lots and lots of chiral carbons. If you have one, then you have D and L isomers, enantiomers. You can have lots of them, but if you have at least one, you'll end up with this D and L stuff. Okay. Now, if you see the long string, like going back up here, let's clean this up somewhere. So the question then is, how do you know whether it's D or L? So we know that chiral carbons are present. Question is how do we know whether it's D or L? Okay, if the molecule is strung out like these are, the chiral carbon farthest from the aldehyde determines whether it's D or L. The carbon farthest from the chiral carbon farthest from the aldehyde group or the ketone group, some cases, for example, fructose has a ketone on it instead of an aldehyde. If the OH is going to the right, it is a D. It goes to the left. So this is going to the right. If it goes to the left, it'll be an L. Now, in our class, biochemicals that occur naturally in mammalians are all Ds. So for example, there's a D glucose and an L glucose. D fructose, L fructose. D sucrose, L sucrose. Okay, we're not going to look at any of the L's, just the D's, because that's what's natural in our bodies. Okay, but as far as the determination whether it's a D or L, it's the chiral carbon farthest from the aldehyde. And that's when they're talking about here. Okay, so here's the aldehyde. Here is farthest chiral carbon. And so here we have the OH going to the left, so that is an L. OH going to the right, so that is a D. Okay. There are a lot of ways to look at a Lewis diagram of carbs, simple sugars anyway. And one way is to look at it with a Fisher projection, putting the aldehyde on top and then vertically dropping down on each carbon having a hydroxyl group, ending in the terminal carbon, non-carbon, by the way, hydroxyl group. Okay, it's called a Fisher projection. 99% of the time, we don't look at it this way. We look at them like this. And this happens to be an alpha D glucose. That is the way that we normally see glucose. We normally don't see glucose in a long vertical Fisher projection. Whenever you have a chiral carbon present and you shine polarized light through it, the light will actually twist. And the twisting is directly proportional to the concentration of the sugar. So the more twists, the higher the concentration of the sugar. When I say twist, it rotates. And so carbohydrate chemists frequently will use one of these guys to look at how concentrated a solution is. If it rotates light to the left, it's called a levo-rotatory versus dextro-rotatory or rotary. Okay. I already mentioned amino acids are chiral and carbs are chiral. And the L and the L form for amino acids. Okay, so classifying monosaccharides. Now, monosaccharides are the building blocks for making more complex carbohydrates. Disaccharides have two monosaccharides tied together, and the special linkage we're going to talk about. Oligosaccharides tie together 3 up to 10 units, frequently glucose or fructose. And then polysaccharides are 11 and more. Most of the time we're looking at these two. Glucose is a hexose because it has 6 carbons in it. Pentoses have 5 carbons in it. Aldotetroses have an aldehyde in them. Keto pentoses, for example, have a ketone in them. Like fructose, for example, is a ketohexose. Hexoses, 6 carbons. Pentoses, 5 carbons. Now, a big exception to this is fructose. So hexoses have 4 chiral carbons that gives 16 versions of that hexose. 8 Ds and 8 Ls. We're not worrying about the names of those. And of the 8 Ds, we're only looking at a couple. So there is memorization in this unit. It's just, it can get wild if you have to know all the stereoisomer names and all. So we're not doing that. We're doing the major ones that you run into 99% of the time. Now, if you look at this molecule here, we have 1 carbon that is chiral. So hence it's going to exist as a D and an L version. In this case, the chiral carbon farthest from the aldehyde is this one here. I've just put a dot on, and its OH group goes to the right, hence it's a D. Here's the farthest chiral carbon from the aldehyde, and they're both going to the right, hence they're both Ds. Okay, so of the 8 aldohexoses, you need to know these 3 that I've checked. For the 5 carbon sugars, monosaccharides, you need to know ribose, you need to know the oxyribose. For this, it's deoxyribose means it's missing 1 hydroxyl group. That'll be over here. Okay, so the monosaccharides you need to know, PAT, are these 4. Actually 5 to count them. Yeah, but if you know what's deoxyribose is easy. Okay. All right, we got some chats here. Let's see. There's a question about the pre-lab for the lab today. Can you go to the Wednesday lab? You go to the Wednesday lab, just bring your lab notebook there. If you can't attend lab at all, yes, you can still get credit for the pre-lab. Just email me to remind me that you've uploaded the pre-lab and I can give you credit for it. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's go on. Okay. One of the most common things people think of with sugars is there are sweet. But interestingly, a lot of sugars are not sweet. Excuse me. For example, starch, carb, not sweet at all. Amylpectin, not sweet at all. Cellulose, not sweet at all. But the monosaccharides, they get into that sweetness category. As a reference, we're looking at common table sugar, sucrose, disaccharide. We're listing that as a relative sweetness of 1. Fructose is almost twice as sweet as sucrose. Now, originally, fructose was given to diabetics because they could achieve the same level of sweetness by putting in less. But the industry got crazy with that, and they started just throwing in tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of fructose with all of its bad effects. Okay, invert sugar, it's found in honey, for example. It's a mixture of glucose and fructose. Sucrose is a covalently bound glucose and fructose. Invert sugar is a separate glucose and a separate fructose. Okay. Now, these are the structures we normally think of when we think of carbohydrates, are the Haworth structures. And they are drawn in a 3-dimensional way where this here is sticking out of the page, this piece here. This here lies in the same plane as the screen or the paper. Okay, so the black sticks out, the red is in the same plane as the paper. Let's look at, if we look at glucose here. Okay, glucose has got a number of, like all monosaccharides, have a number of hydroxyl groups. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 hydroxyl groups. If we open it up, we have 6, and this is the other one, and this opens up. That's the other one, okay? So an easy way to remember glucose is on the left here, it goes down, and then it alternates. This one over here can be up or down. Still glucose. When it's down, it's called alpha glucose. And when it's up, it's beta glucose. So you have alpha and beta forms of all of them. Okay, notice beta, the OH is going up. Now galactose, it's just like glucose, except this guy goes up instead of down. You've all heard of lactose. Lactose is a disaccharide. Lactose is a combination of glucose plus galactose. Here we have beta glucose, alpha glucose. The alpha goes down, beta goes up, and they can interchange via this guy here. I'm going to talk about that in extreme detail later. But the bottom line is when you see, notice how these alternate down, and either up or down. And this is always the same up here. And again, carbon number 1, that's how you number it now. Carbon number 1 is the most important carbon, that in number, and to a lesser extent, 4 and 6. But this one particularly, because it can go, the hydroxyl group can go up or down. And secondly, that's where this ring here opens up right there on carbon number 1. So that's particularly important carbon, and it's called an anomeric carbon. So the anomeric carbon goes alpha or beta, depending where the OH group is, up or down. Uranose is a hetero. Let's spell hetero. Okay, so a pyranose is a 6-membered heterocyclic ring. The hetero part is because of oxygen. So you've got 5 carbons plus 1 oxygen, gives you 6-membered ring. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the oxygen, 6-membered ring. This is another carbon right here. That does not participate in the ring. A furanose, same thing. Well, it's got 4 carbons instead of 5, and it's got an oxygen in there. Now, when we draw these Hayward structures, we always put the anomeric carbon on the right. And that's the one that's attached to the oxygen. And that's the one where the OH group can go up or it can go down. Enantiomers are same structure, except that anomeric carbon has a hydroxyl going up or down. And these are going to form these guys here. And that's when we connect rings together. To get a disaccharide, we need to have 2 units. Those units are connected through the anomeric carbon. That's why it's really important. Now, so this is a furanose. It is a 5-membered ring. Four carbons plus 1 oxygen. So this is going to be the anomeric carbon. Hence that the H group can either be up or down. Now, with a furanose like fructose, it also pivots this guy. So the OH and this 1 carbon alcohol piece up here is going to be flipped with the OH. Okay, which differs with a furanose 6-membered ring, where only the OH is flipped. It drags a hydrogen with it, but basically the OH is flipped only here. With a furanose, the OH and this carbon unit are flipped together. That makes sense? And we're going to be drawing a lot of these. A lot of these. So again, whenever we draw the Hayward structure, any of our monosaccharides and disaccharides, actually, and oligosaccharides and our polysaccharides, we're always going to be putting the anomeric carbon on the single building block on the right. Never on the left. And remember, the anomeric carbon is the one that is going to have an OH up or down. Okay. There is a very common term used with carbohydrates. It's called, is this a reducing sugar? Excuse me. So we already talked about Benedict's solution. We talked about aldehydes and ketones, where a Benedict solution will turn one of these 2 colors if there's an aldehyde present. Okay, a reducing sugar opens up to an aldehyde. When it goes from a beta and alpha version of the molecule. So it's capable of opening up. When it opens up, it exposes an aldehyde, in which case Benedict solution, you have a positive reaction then. So we're not going to worry about this till we talk about lipids. Okay. All right. Okay, so that was an introduction to carbs. We have not gone into any of the reactions yet. Okay, I touched upon it a minute ago with these guys opening up to aldehydes. Okay, so right now, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go back to the aldehyde ketone chapter and talk about these acetals and ketones because they're simpler in the aldehyde ketone chapter. So yes. Someone started to talk. Do you guys have a question? Okay. What I'm doing now is going over to the aldehyde ketone. Okay. Now let's talk about aldehydes and ketones in reference to alcohols. Um, Now we talked about the aldehyde reactions already. You can oxidize an aldehyde, you can reduce an aldehyde. If you oxidize an aldehyde, it goes to the acid. If you reduce it, it goes to the alcohol. Okay, if there's an alcohol around, the alcohol and aldehyde can form a reaction where they become a new molecule together. Okay, so the alcohol converts the carbonyl group to an alcohol. So this goes to the alcohol, and the alcohol tags onto that carbon. And you form a hemiacetal. If that isn't stopped, the alcohol can continue and adds on to the OH and becomes a full acetal. Now, an acetal has a oxygen, carbon, oxygen bond. A hemiacetal also has a oxygen, carbon, oxygen bond. An acetal has an oxygen, carbon bond. Okay. A hemiacetal has OH present. An acetal has no OH present. So okay, so what is that? Well, number one, is there an OCO combination present? Yes. We have OCO. That means it's an acetal or let me, in fact, I'm going to back up a second here. Okay, so we're starting with an aldehyde. and an alcohol. Now, what happens if we start with a ketone instead of okay. If we start with a ketone and an alcohol, we're going to get a ketal and then a ketal. Okay, so we're still looking for an OCO, OCO. So if we have an OCO, we have a acetal or a ketal, which is a ketone version, or a hemiacetal or a hemiketal. Okay, so step number one is OCO present. Okay. Step number two is OH present on that carbon. If yes, it's a hemi. If it's no, not a hemi. Number three, is there an H present? If yes, then it's a acetal. And if OH is there, it's a hemiacetal. If no, it is a ketal or a hemiketal if OH is present. Okay, so know these three steps. A lot of the reactions on that worksheet number 8 had to do with identifying acetals, etc., some of the reactions. So let's now practice this. Let's go back to that molecule we just did here.
For number 3, does that say if present?
No, it says H.
Okay.
Sorry. Better? Okay. Okay, so what is this guy? Is this an acetal? Well, first of all, is it nothing? Is it an acetal, ketal, hemiacetal, hemiketal? So let's go through the steps here. Number one, is there an OCO there? OCO. Yes. So that means it's going to be one of those. Okay, one of the four: acetal, ketal, hemiacetal, hemiketal. If you start with a ketone, it's going to be a ketal. Start with an aldehyde, it's going to be an acetal. Okay, is it a hemi? Okay, so you go to this carbon, that OCO, the C there, is there an OH present? Yes, there is. So that means it's a hemi something. Okay, number 3, is H present on that carbon? Yes. So it's a hemiacetal. So number 1 is yes. Number 2 is yes. Number 3 is yes. Do you guys see where I got those 3 S's? 3 S's, 3 yeses.
I have a question for 3. How do you tell if there's an H or not? I'm trying to remember.
How many bonds does carbon have?
4.
4, okay. We have,
Okay.
okay, we have 1, 2, 3. The 4th one is the H.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a hemiacetal. The question now is, what are the reactions? How can I make that? Okay, but let's do some more practice here. Let's do. Okay. So question number one, is there an OCO?
Yes.
OCO right there. Okay. Ah, that means it's going to be one of these: acetals, ketals, hemiacetals, hemiketals. Okay. Question number two, is there an OH present off that middle carbon?
No.
So that means it's not a hemi. Okay. Is there an H there? It's carbon there. Does it have an H on it?
No.
Yes, it does. Remember, carbon again is 4 bonds. If you only see 3, that means the fourth one is a hydrogen. Line drawings don't include hydrogens. So there's a hydrogen there. So now we have, it's got no OH, so it's not a hemi, and it's got an H there. So that means it's an acetal. The way you would name this guy, okay, this is a methoxy. This is a methoxy. So this is going to be a 1,1 dimethoxy. Okay. Okay, let's do another one. Okay. What is this guy? All right, well, we have OCO. OCO. So that's a yeah. Now, that happens again. That means we have a ketal, an acetal, or hemi versions. So there's 4 options whenever we have an OCO. Okay. Question number 2. Is there an OH on this guy here? Nope. So that means it's not a hemi. Number 3. Is there an H there?
No.
No H either. That means this is a ketal then. Okay, so this is a methoxy, ethoxy. Okay, ethoxy because it's got 2 carbons, methoxy because it has 1. And it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be a pentane. That's going to be 3,3. Let's see. And that's not going to be 2, it's going to be 3. Methoxy. 3 methoxy. Pentane. Now, if you look at the worksheet number 8, you're going to be getting into some naming, some reactions. So I'm going to put up a separate key. Because a lot of them, when I'm doing the key, I put unit 2, unit 2, unit 2. I'm going to fill in all those unit 2 for answers. Okay. Let's do one more here. Okay. So do we have OCO?
No, we don't.
Nope. So that means we don't have an acetal, ketal, or hemiacetal, or hemiketal. This is just an ether. Couple ethers, actually, and one molecule. All right, I'm gonna do one more. Let's see. Okay. We have OCO. Yes, we do. And OCO. Okay, we have OH present on that carbon there.
Yes.
Sure do. And is there a hydrogen there?
Yes.
That means it's going to be a hemiacetal. Okay, so let's talk now about how to make these things. Let's see, that's when you take them apart. Up here we make them. All right. So these reactions usually are two-step. First you make the hemi, then you make the full. If we start with a ketone like here, we're going to make a hemi-ketal first. Then we're going to make, then it's going to go to the ketal. Okay. First the hemi, then the full-blown one. Okay. So acetone and ethanol. Let's see. Like all this stuff here. In one room. Okay, so we're starting with acetone or propanone. Plus, was it ethanol? I think it was ethanol, right? Okay. We need some acid. Okay, so we're starting with a ketone now. So that means we're going to end up with a either hemiketal or a full-blown ketal because they're starting with a ketone. So the ketone goes to the hemi, then it goes to the full ketal. All right, so the first step is the hemiketal in this case. That means the alcohol is going to attach on that carbon there. So this carbon here, that one there. So this is a 2-carbon alcohol. Two carbons. And the first step is a hemi, that means there's an OH here. Okay, so that carbon that the carbonyl is attached to, the carbon that the double bonded O is attached to, is the point where everything attaches. And in carbohydrates, that's the anomeric carbon. Okay, so that alcohol now is going to attach to that carbon right there. And the O part of the OH is what sticks onto that carbon. With another ethanol, what's going to happen is it's just going to stick on right there. So when you're looking at these things, once you identify to ketal, how do you make the thing? Okay, you've got two parts. You've got the original backbone that either the aldehyde or ketone from which you started. Okay, then you've got alcohols sticking on here. Okay, so you got the original backbone, which is either to be a ketone or an aldehyde. Then you've got these alcohols that are sticking on to where the carbonyl was. Okay, did you guys follow that okay? I'm going to do lots of examples, but are you okay so far? Here's the original backbone. You are maintaining that backbone, that the original aldehyde or ketone. Before you start adding these alcohols on. And then, of course, we name that. Backbone is 3, so it's propane. And we have 2,2 in their ethoxys. Okay. Need more room here. Now let's shrink this thing in. All right, let's do another example. Okay, let's start with an aldehyde this time. In fact, let's just start with the same 3-carbon backbone here. So that's going to be propanol. And let's add ethanol again. Acid. Okay, so we've got our backbone is this. And our alcohol, 2-carbon alcohol. Okay, so this guy is going to attach here. That carbonyl, the double bonded O, becomes an OH now with the alcohol attaching here. And we've got backbone. So this is going to be our amide because we have an OH there. And because you started with an aldehyde, it's going to be a hamide acetal instead of a hamide ketal. Okay, so let's continue on because we will have some more alcohols present. So our alcohol now is going to attach here. That same carbon again. Yeah. Anomeric carbon. Okay, so the OH is going away. We still have the original one here. And then we're going to add that Okay, so we have OCO. No OHs, so we have no OHs, so it's not a hemi. And we have hydrogen there. So that means this is a acetal. Okay, 3-carbon backbone, so it's propane. We have one dimethoxy propane. This is going to be a hydroxy and a ethoxy. So 1 ethoxy, 1 hydroxy propane. And of course, we start with no. Now these you need practice with. Really need practice with these. So I'm looking at worksheet number 8. Um, for example, this is problem 13, for example. So we're starting with an aldehyde. And it says we're going to add some methanol. We have methanol, 1 carbon, alcohol. Okay, aldehyde, alcohol. So that means this guy is going to attach here on the anomeric carbon. It's all in red. This is right here. And this is that one. Another alcohol. We get our original backbone here. That's our first alcohol. The second alcohol is going to attach in the same place. And so we have a backbone. We have our 2 alcohols. 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 2 alco So just kind of. Okay, so acetals require two acids, two acetals require two alcohols, one aldehyde. Hemiacetals require one alcohol, one aldehyde. Ketones, two alcohols, one ketone. Ketones require one alcohol, one ketone. When you look at this product you're trying to make, you go, oh, this is an acetal. That means I got to come up with two alcohols. The alcohols are stuck onto the oxygens in blue. The aldehyde forms the backbone in yellow. Now, the wild thing is you can have the alcohol and the aldehyde on the same long molecule, where the tail whips around and exposes the alcohol end of that long molecule. This is the alcohol. Here's the backbone, all in the same molecule. So we end up making a hemiacetal with one long molecule. And that's called a monosaccharide. Okay, and then the reverse reaction can occur as well. We can take the acetals and ketals apart, as long as we understand what formed them, the alcohols and the aldehyde or ketone backbone. So, for example, if we started with, let's see, let me make this smaller. I'm running out of real estate here. Okay, so keep these guys. Know that, and then let's look at this here. So let's create a simpler version here without the cyclic in there. Let's look at, let's just start with a acetal. So we have Okay, so. This thing can come apart as well. So. What does this form when it comes apart? Well, we've got a backbone here. And we've got an alcohol. We have the alcohol here. And did this come from an aldehyde or ketone? Well, we need to do the analysis. Okay. Oh, oops. We have OCO. Yes, we have OCO. Number 2, OH present. Yes. H present. Yes. So this is a hemi acetal. Okay, did everyone see where I got 3 S's? So O, C, O, that's the anomeric carbon, one between the 2 O's. Is your OH present? Yes. And number 3, is there H present? Yes. That means we started with an aldehyde, if there's H's there. So H is present. But with an aldehyde. Start with an aldehyde. We have a backbone of how many carbons? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a 4-carbon aldehyde. And the acid of the alcohol. Which is a 2-carbon alcohol. 2-carbon alcohol. When you see the OCO, that means there's alcohols present that created it, and either an aldehyde or ketone. To take it apart, you'd end up doing the same analysis, 1, 2, 3, to end up with the starting backbone aldehyde, starting backbone ketone, plus the alcohols to create it. Now, we only created 1 alcohol in this case because we started with a hemi. We started with a full-blown acetal, we'd end up with 2 alcohols, 1 from each O group there. How are we doing? It's just wild stuff, isn't it? Okay, let's take apart another, let's take apart a ketal in this case. So, okay, so we have OCO, anomeric carbon, OCO. So that's a yes. Do we have OH present? No. So that's either a ketal or an acetal. And is H present? No. So that makes that a ketal. Okay, ketal start with a ketone. And what does our backbone look like? Backbone is here. alcohols are here. So those are 1 carbon alcohols. 1 carbon alcohols are methanol. Let's see. Methanol. Okay, so now because it's a ketal, we're going to end up with 2 alcohols, 2 methanol. And a backbone ketone. Then here's our backbone. And this is not, I just do ethanol. Yeah. Um, I'm looking at worksheet 8 again here, but more practice problems. Okay, let's just, okay, it's 135. Okay, so we're starting with a ketone and an alcohol. What are we going to make? What do you make when you start with a ketone and an alcohol?
Is it a keto
Yep, you start with a ketone, you make a ketal, either a hemiketal, if you stop
or
having,
keto?
or full ketal. Okay, so we need a backbone here. That's our backbone, and we have a 2 carbon alcohol. So this is a bupropion and then ethanol. Okay, so that alcohol is going to attach to the anomeric carbon. That carbon is attached to the double bonded O. And the first time through, we're going to get the hemi version. So we're starting with ketone, alcohol. And we're going to hemi ketal to start with. So that alcohol again is going to attack the anomeric carbon, not attack it, but add to it. We're going to end up with our backbone. So we have our backbone. Now to alcohol. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be a pentane backbone. On carbons 3, there's going to be an epoxy. So it's going to be 3, 3 di epoxy pentane. This guy is going to be a hydroxy and ethoxy. So it's going to be a 3 ethoxy, 3 hydroxy pentane. Okay, so what do you guys think of this?
Not too bad.
Well, if you break it down, I tried to break it down looking with what's, this guy here. What are ketals and acetals made up of? And then look for those parts. And that's what you start with. If it's a ketal, that means you gotta have 2 alcohols in there and a backbone. If it's a acetal, that means you have a aldehyde backbone and 2 alcohols. It's so I want everyone to print worksheet 8 and go through the ones. I'm going to be making a new key and posting this in unit 2 stuff. But every time I put unit 2 down there, go ahead and work those out for practice. And I'll publish the key. It won't take me very long to put the key together. I'll post it before I finish grading the tests. So I should have that up tonight. Okay, all right. Any last minute questions? We have a chat question here. Where is that? Let's see.
You said you're
Professor?
finished grading the test tonight.
You were breaking up. I didn't hear you. What? Say again?
You said that you're finishing up grading the test tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. And will they be posted tonight or tomorrow?
Tonight.
Okay.
I had a question, Professor.
Yeah.
What do we need to bring for the lab today?
Pre-lab. Pre-lab write-up. That means you're going to be writing up the title, purpose, and procedure in your lab books. And because this is our first wet lab, I'm going to allow you to fix all your mistakes. And then after that, the wet lab, you get what you get. Okay, so title, purpose, procedure, any first aid, we're just using water and orange peel. There's no first aid today. Everything is food related.
Professor, does the pre-lab have to be printed out?
What you talking about, the worksheet aid?
No, like the pre-lab. I did it on my iPad. Do you want it printed, or is it okay if we turn it in like a PDF form on Canvas?
As long as you, on your iPad, as long as you hand wrote it, that's fine. Did you handwrite it or type it?
It's handwritten, but do you want it printed, or is it okay if I keep it on my iPad?
Keep it on your iPad, it's fine, as long as you hand wrote it.
Okay, it's handwritten.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's fine.
Professor.
Yeah, that's fine. And then and then when you finish it, you'll just either download it as a PDF and upload it under assignments, or what you can do is there are certain scanners you can actually go directly into Canvas. You don't have to download it first.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. So I mentioned if you are absent, if you're a Monday student and you're absent, go to the Wednesday lab. If you're the Wednesday lab and you're absent, well, there's no other labs to come into. So you have to upload your pre-lab. I'll give you credit for that. And depending on the reason why you're absent, I may have you dry lab it. It depends. Okay, any other questions?
Are we writing the pre-lab procedure word for word?
You can summarize.
Okay,
It's got to be detailed enough that if you didn't have your lab packet, you can still do the lab. So if you summarize, you have to be careful on summarizing. You can be too succinct where it's too brief and you can't follow it. So yes, if you feel better doing word for word, that's fine. Otherwise, summarize in a reasonable way. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm going to end this.